Hello everyone. Today we would present to you Terracotta House located in the dense urban city of Agra in Uttar Pradesh. Designed across a built-up area of 2,100 square feet, this home belongs to a joint family spread across 3 generations. The large and open spaces visually interconnect the family members while also giving them choices to retreat into their own personal spaces. The clean geometric facade, made up of terracotta and concrete, creates a contrast that also reflects in the spatial experience. If you want to know more about this project story, click on the link mentioned in the description below. It will take you to our website buildofy.com where you can become a member and download full PDF ebook including the detailed floor plans, section elevation with dimensions and the material palette. You can download 250 plus PDF ebooks of the houses pan India. Till then, I hope you enjoy this video.
So this house is in an absolute dense fabric of Agra, where a lot of these large houses are, and people are from all over the city really gravitating to this place to put their large bungalows. The family was complex because it was 3 elder brothers. The eldest had 2 sons and 2 other sons had 1 each. So there were 6 families that had to stay together. So the brief was quite complex and honest, that they wanted their own privacy in their own ways, but with the degree of freedom. So this whole typical tension of the elders wanting to be with the kids and the kids wanting their own freedom had really to be captured as an essence to the project. So this is one of the main roads of Agra, and this is the gated space I'm talking about, with the road leading to multiple plots. And the current house we are talking about is really the corner or the starting of the street, which basically meant that it had to shoulder a lot of noise and busyness on one side while being the entry to this street on the other. The big advantage was that there was a big, large green plot at the back, which is a forest land. So it had a very thick, dense green cover, which is rare for a city like this. So functionally, the house started looking towards the back. The way we played with the mass was really like a big volume on one side, another big volume on one side, and then these 2 volumes had a fairly large garden to celebrate, where everybody visually or physically would connect down to. So the whole house is fairly introvert, almost looks blank, and I think that blankness, that simplicity and cleanliness is what makes it loud enough as a client need. There were 2 entries on 2 ends of the house because the central area was all pretty much lush green. Now one would enter here, bring in the car if required, and you had an entrance foyer to start with, and here as well you had a big entrance foyer as one enters. As you enter, the largest volume of formal space is the volume on one side, so you keep the visitors to the outside, give them the view to the garden, and make it like a big buffer for the rest of the private house. On the other side as well, as you enter, you really are on the upper floor, and so you take the visitors to the back, which is where the great views are for the greens. As you enter further, you've got a bedroom for the elderly, which needed access from the outside with a temple and an angan, and you needed a master bedroom which was completely secluded on one side to get its own access to the garden and its own access to the outhouse. Right at the back is the big kitchen. The house kind of comes through the garden, and the kitchen has a kitchen garden at the back, while the master bedroom really allows for a bathroom area and a personal pool, etc. to the back. It's kept a very clear reality that one could walk on the periphery of the entire house throughout. On the other side, as you enter the atrium, you got this one large volume of a formal living space, and just a screen above that because that's the outer garden, but with a cover because of the privacy, while the lower floors worked as 2 bedrooms for 2 families of 2 brothers. Interestingly, on top, the 2 sons would have their own little duplex that would sit on top with a big jungle in the middle of the house with a glass bridge. So the idea was that they were very connected to their parents if need be, but they have a full access of having their own little houses just perched on top of the large house at the bottom. It was very important for us to see how we could have contrasts, and those contrasts actually highlight the kind of experience we want to make. So as people entered the house, it was this one large dark volume with a very narrow slit of light that brings in a certain calmness and coolness in terms of temperature from a harsh sun of Agra in the house, and that darkness actually just slows you down, and from there one would make choices of being able to go forward. This is the entrance foyer, which is almost like a double triple height foyer with sculptures and art pieces. This is the formal living which you enter. It's a double height space which is totally looking out to a garden within the house, but also gets a lot of natural light from the top. From here, as one enters, there's this big translucent wall which is almost like the night light to the house. One kind of goes through to this living space, which is a space that connects the 2 gardens, the front and the back, with a living, a dining, a backyard, and then the back alley. Now that double height space, which has gardens on both sides, so it connects the front and the back. I think that connect really makes the space come together. It's really a place where the family sits together, eats together, television space and the sitting space. On the other side, there is a bedroom for the grandmother with the temple as an independent access from outside, and a fairly large kitchen that serves the dining space with a back kitchen garden and all the other services. On the other side of the living is the master bedroom. Very large, spacious dresser, washroom facilities with a back pool connected to the washroom itself. And the bedroom has one very interesting feature, that it opens out to its own little outhouse. This outhouse is actually a 2-floored space with a pool table, a bar, a home theater and an entertainment zone. And I think the beauty of it was the compactness of it. So at a level of a metaphor from an outside volume, it was like a pot of plants, because you had plants coming out of this one concrete box. But on the inside, it was these 2 floors interconnected with this very sleek wooden cantilevered staircase. There was a mirror ceiling given to exaggerate the smallness and the tallness of the space, but also a way to connect these 2 spaces visually. So you could actually be sitting downstairs watching a movie, but if you look at the ceiling, you can see the person playing pool on top. And I thought that was very interesting. And in terms of materiality, we just used a lot of cork and concrete. Cork to be able to absorb all the sound, and concrete as a complete contrast of a material in that space. Then when we look at individual bedroom spaces, each one had a personality of his own, each one had a need of his own, and to capture that in its essence, a couple staying together, wanting to have a study and a television coexisting but not disturbing each other, with controlled lighting to the study but blocking the light for the television, etc. How a large dresser can partly open up into a washroom which completely opens into a back swimming pool or a lap pool. So those kinds of fun elements were all integrated as individual domains for individual people. Going on the upper floors, there were 2 sons, 1 son from each brother, and they were people who've been studying or living in Singapore and Europe, and they were coming back, and that had to be translated back into something that would give them comfort in the middle of an old city of Agra. It's a very interesting unit of 2 very tight plans that work through the space with a staircase in the middle. So at the lower floor, you've got 2 bedrooms and the space opens up to a large terrace which has a ramp up where you actually meander through the entire ramp to go to the rooftop. The idea is that it's a playful space to be able to connect all the greens and all the open spaces of the house without necessarily using the elevator or the main staircase. But as you come up this unit with the 2 bedrooms, you actually come up to the living area. So you got a study space which kind of overlooks and connects, and you got a living space. All living spaces are to the back in the entire house for the simple reason because that's the place where all the views and the greens are. And so these units actually work like a complete house in themselves, and for a young couple, for a young bachelor, this could actually be a perfect pad as an apartment in itself. The most important spaces that make the house their home is really the common spaces, the spaces of interaction or the spaces of transition. So if you had a large double height terrace which was opening up to a table tennis space or a place for chess, it would ramp up to a rooftop which had its own garden, its own vegetable growing space, and it had a very large party space as well. So you could practically host people in different parts of the house at the same time. You had corridors which were always large enough to become spaces. You had bridges with seating. You had bridges made so that you could have a connection with the green and the light if need be, and you could kind of go into your own dark spaces, your own private spaces, intimate spaces if need be. We looked at terracotta and concrete, how they were always complementing each other. One extremely crisp earthy material, one a fairly strong and harsh material. How they connected and contrasted and complemented each other was really beautiful. We tried to exaggerate our impact of art on our spaces depending on where the art was with these kinds of framings. The framings were the material palettes, the large volumes, the big walls with the light coming in. So if I look at it at a larger morphology, it's very clear that there were these 2 terracotta masses and everything else was punctuated with concrete. These terracotta masses then had a very playful reality of becoming tessellations or very kind of a fabric of louvers. Now these louvers would do 2 things. It would completely block the view inside the houses but not block the light. It would bring in a certain amount of shade because this was harsh sun, but they would not block the air away for ventilation. And of course it gave a bit of a trick in terms of making something almost like a traditional pattern in a very contemporary, simple way. All the concrete was fair face concrete, done with complete German shuttering systems, so that the finish was absolutely sublime. You could be very thin walls, you could have very clean lines, and the terracotta clad. In this house, the budgets, the spaces, the flexibility, the largeness allowed us to celebrate design at every level. So each piece, whether it was a trolley or a table, a chair or a light, was all curated. So you would have a Corbusier light with a Geoponti sofa, or all the big brands of furniture bringing in their best pieces together. Backbone to this entire visual treat of very classy, clean spaces is actually a very intricate machine. So we had concrete ceilings as secondary ceilings, so the entire units could be placed on top and you could have indirect lighting or indirect air conditioning. We had complete radiant cooling systems on the floor which could heat up your floor in winters and cool them in summers for a very good, comfortable, barefoot walking experience in the house. So you had all kinds of security systems embedded, but none of it being visible. The big advantage with this house was that we had a lot of trust with the clients. They had the courage to trust. And so the freedom we got to playfully work around this larger issue of having a lot of people, a house with probably about 15 to 16 bedrooms, but still a house that had its quiet corners, its independence, its freedom, its individuality within a larger envelope. And I think that reflects in the layout, that reflects in the space, and it actually even reflects on the way they use it now.